Your B2B Marketing Pint is the podcast for B2B technology marketers who want to sharpen their competitive edge. Joined by other marketing veterans, your hosts Brian O'Grady and Brendan Ziolo share expertise on what works today and why. Grab a cold pint of hot takes on branding, content marketing, demand generation, and more, served with a side of sarcasm.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the B2B Marketing Pint podcast. I'm super happy this episode to be joined by Allan Wille, who's a longtime friend, ironically former boss of mine. He put up with me for a while, and I think our first, Brian, client of both Zinc Marketing and Search Warrant at one time. Allan's now the co-founder and CEO of Klipfolio, a business analytics platform that helps teams make faster, smarter decisions with data, which ironically is going to be our topic today as well. I guess that's the opposite of ironic. He's also, I know, a designer who's very, very talented. I've seen his work. And a passionate cyclist who I just found out today does not cycle in the winter, outside anyway. I thought he did and was crazy because of it.
No, it's a bad idea.
Let's kick this off with our standard opening. Brian, what are you drinking today?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Brendan. Longtime viewers may notice I'm in a different surrounding today. I'm coming to you live from Northern Ontario. There's probably moose nearby. I'm up in Sudbury. And if I'm going to be up in Sudbury, where I found Trey Studios, that's where I'm sitting right now in their podcast studio, 24-hour podcast studio in Sudbury, who knew? If I'm going to be up in Sudbury, I got to stop and get something local. So by coincidence, I was with friends on Panache Lake outside Sudbury. And what did I find? But a Panache Session IPA, which I know will be right down Allan's alley because he's such a big fan of IPAs he discussed in the pre-show. That's what I'm cracking open today. My new friend Eric at Stack Brewery hooked me up with this. Shout out to Eric and Stack Brewery in Sudbury. What are you guys drinking?
So I'm doing the non-alcohol as our regular viewers want. This time I'm doing a Muskoka Brewery Veer Hazy IPA. Fan of the IPAs. This one's quite good considering there's no alcohol in it. So big fan of that. And I'm also coming to you from our pub. So not the regular location, but our pub that we built especially for this podcast. Hopefully that continues to work out for us. Allan, what are you drinking?
Well, first of all, Brian and Brendan, thank you for having me on. I think this is great. I've known both of you for a very long time, so I'm super happy to be here and happy to chat more about dashboards and analytics and everything in between. So I know we chatted earlier that I'm not a huge fan of IPAs, but every once in a blue moon, you sort of want something a little bit spicier. So I'm going for the detour.
What? That's a full-on IPA.
It's a full-on IPA. And as I said, every now and then you want to veer off the regular course and have a little bit more spice in the life, right? So that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to join you guys with this hoppy IPA.
Fantastic. Unless I missed my guess, that's a Muskoka Detour. I recognize the can.
There you go.
So maybe we should drop the hint that two of us are drinking Muskoka now. So hint, Muskoka Brewery, sponsor us.
Yeah, that's a sure shoe in. That's got to happen for next episode.
That's how it works.
All right.
Well, get to sip it, right?
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Okay. Now we can talk analytics and dashboards.
Oh, there's a lot of hop in that.
All right. Are you folks feeling analytical and expert and wise?
Well, let's see where it takes us.
Let's see where it takes us. Okay. Brendan, you want me to start us off?
It's all yours. The floor is yours, Brian, and then we'll get some great insights from Allan, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've got so many things to ask, and I'm really glad we agreed to shared custody of Allan, we've worked with both of us in the past. We'll alternate weekends, I guess, to get Allan. Maybe he'll come back on the podcast, alternate weekends. But I have a lot of podcast, or rather dashboard questions, because basically ever since I was working with Allan and his team at Klipfolio, I fell in love with dashboards. I love measuring things that we used to not be able to measure in digital marketing. And it's close to my heart. I still don't think I've seen the perfect dashboard, but we'll try. So I'm going to ask some listeners, if you do this all the time, might consider old school questions, but I know for a fact there's a big chunk of people out there in the industry who don't have them, who don't use them, who wish they had them, who want to know more about them. So I'm going to start with some sort of 101s, and we'll work our way up to the expert dashboard questions later. So let's start with a softball one. Allan, you've been doing this for a long time. You're an expert designer. You've made a lot of dashboards, 20 years in dashboarding. How the hell do you make a dashboard that actually matters and it gets used for its purpose, as opposed to a pretty dashboard that everyone agrees on and then gets ignored for the next year until it's turned off? What's the difference between the ones that actually matter and just the pretty ones that don't get used?
Yeah, good question, Brian. So you're right. I mean, we've worked with tens of thousands of customers, who use our platform to build dashboards and have better decision making tools in front of their teams. And I think there's a couple of things when you look at what are the dashboards or what are the tools that actually get used. So first of all, the very, very first thing is start small. And in particular, if you already have a metric that is being discussed in your Monday morning meetings, or if there's a manual process for a metric or a KPI that you're already looking at or manually updating on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, start there. See if you can automate that. Maybe make it a little bit more robust, perhaps even include some segmentation. So let's use an example. Let's say you're an online retailer and you're looking at cart abandonment. So how many people actually don't complete the sale, right? This is a metric that is coming up all the time. But you don't have an automated way of looking at this. Maybe the data is coming through some system that needs to be copied and pasted into a spreadsheet. But every week, it's such an important metric that it gets talked about. So start with that. Make sure that the thing that you're measuring is something that you're already doing and caring about. So that's probably the simplest way to start thinking about it. And then, make it more robust. So look at maybe this metric by returning or new customer, or maybe look at it by geo if the data supports it. So start there. The other thing is start building out things that you then regularly revisit. So everybody's got grand plans, and we've had customers who've come to us and they said, we've got 30 to 40 metrics that we want to start monitoring right out of the gate. And that's great. They've done their research. But I bet you'll start that process and maybe you'll get halfway there. You've got 20 metrics on dashboards. Revisit those dashboards, revisit those metrics, because probably half of them will not get used. So then you've got a choice. Either trim the ones that don't get used because clearly they're not as important, or they're not intended or getting to the right audience, or improve them. So regularly come back, make sure that your dashboard, your cockpit is clean. It actually does spark discussion and helps in decision making. And if it doesn't, keep maintaining it, keep updating it. I do this all the time. I mean, you could argue that we're one of the front runners in, dashboard platforms, analytic platforms, and yet our internal dashboards are constantly being updated. And I mean, a little internal secret is we've got lots of metrics that are not being used. We should probably be deleting those. So there's no shame in having a plan, building it out, and then saying, you know what, these ones actually are not hitting the mark. Let's remove them, or let's figure out why they're not hitting the mark and upgrading them. So start with making sure that they get used. Start with something, if you can, start with something that actually matters today, and see if you can automate it in an analytic dashboard that the team looks at every week, every day, hopefully.
Hopefully every day. I love that. And I'm going to give a shout out. I'm not sure if it's you that taught me this or it was one of our previous guests. I can't remember the source. It wasn't me, although I'd love it if it were me. One of the measures we use in our business to do exactly what you just prescribed is the example is, let's say you walk into the office in the morning and this KPI X, has either gone through the roof or it's fallen off a cliff overnight. Well, who do you call and what do you do next? And if the answer is nothing, get that thing off your dashboard. It doesn't matter. And then we try to use that all the time. Does that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting you mentioned that, right? So, I mean, immediately that sparks another sort of pitfall in my mind. So, make sure that you're looking at the right time frame, right? Because some metrics have got volatility that exists within a normal range. So, if it's fallen off the cliff, maybe the first question you should be asking yourself is, hey, is this within the normal range? Is this expected? Do I need to freak out about this, or do I just need a larger date window, right? I mean, if you look at metrics on a minute by minute basis, it's going to be all over the map. If you look at it on an hourly basis, a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a quarterly basis, you're smoothing out those trends. So a lot of looking at metrics and dashboards, you have to look at the right time grain. And, when do you make that decision? When do you want it smooth? And then the other thing also related to that is, well, it fell off the edge of the world. Is there a particular segment that fell off? Or did something go up, but something else go down? Like the dashboard, the metric might have not done anything overnight, but you might have had tremendous change. Maybe Canada did a 300% increase and Germany did a, 300% decrease. But the average metric looks exactly the same. So I think be cautious about any kind of change. Make sure that you understand the time grain, and then, where you can, dig in and see if there's movement underneath the hood.
Makes sense to me. I could go on all day about that, but I know Brendan's chomping at the bit to get in here. What do you got, Brendan?
Yeah, so I wanted to, Alan, you answered kind of part of my question, I think, already in what you were first talking about. Start small, make sure people are using the metric. If it's not being used, either improve or remove it, because definitely been at places where the dashboard was insanely complicated, tracked everything under the sun, and was then quickly ignored afterwards because people were just overwhelmed. And one of the things I always thought made sense, but want your take on it, is, different roles in the organization are going to have different data needs. So how do you, build out a dashboard for the CMO versus the CFO versus the CRO, et cetera, without becoming it just overwhelming for the people who are building it out, customizing it, and all that thing. So, I definitely like your start small point and, optimize, but there's also going to be various different needs by different people. What's kind of your recommendation to make it work for the CEO and at the same time have a version that works for someone else, or, that wants to get in the weeds?
Yeah. And that's a huge question, Brendan. It on the one hand, it basically, if you build out the metrics that run your company, if you build out all of those metrics, you've basically defined the funnel or the strategy of your company, right? So at the highest point is, perhaps shareholder value, right? The CFO, the CEO, they care about that. Then come all maybe the profitability metrics and the revenue metrics, and then the marketing metrics, and then the customer support and engagement and net promoter score, the HR metrics that sort of fuel all of that. If you build all of that stuff out, you're easily in the realm of 100 metrics. That's not going to work for everybody, obviously, but the company as a whole is operating with all of those metrics in place. That structure is how the company basically operates, from top of funnel to bottom of funnel and back again. So you almost think about the metric system once you've built it out as sort of a living, breathing machine. And of course, there's going to be specialties inside of that machine where the CFO spends most of their time, the CEO or the head of support or the people manager. And I think it's think of it as a huge knowledge map or a knowledge graph or a business map, if you're not familiar with the term knowledge graph, where these things are actually interconnected. And maybe a little example might help, because you may have a support manager who is looking at the number of support tickets, just the number or the close rate or something like that, they may ask a question. Why did this metric go up or down? So the answering of that question traverses this whole knowledge graph. So to answer why did the metric go up or down, you may have to look at the other inputs. And other inputs may be explicit in that, these two metrics are actually calculated together to make some other metric. So we know that there's a relationship there that if this goes up and that goes up, then it impacts this other metric. Other ones might be implicit. We know that Net Promoter Score might not have a direct calculated relationship with number of support tickets, but it has a loose and a relationship where if NPS score goes down, well, we're probably going to have more support tickets. So we know that those things are key to the strategy. And then you may ask, well, why did NPS score go down? And you sort of unravel this thing. So if you want to have a real sense of the business, you are definitely focused on the things that your department can control and can take action on. But you also need to be familiar with the things that are influencing that or the things that you are influencing down the road. So I think, if you're familiar with kind of the OKR model of managing objectives and key results, it has a similar framework where there's these top level metrics that the business feeds into. You should be thinking about that as well. Every department, every team, even every person could be monitoring their own personal metrics if you go to that degree. So I think it really all has to do with, okay, what are the things that matter to my objectives? Do I know that they're actually feeding into the larger objectives? Can I take action on those objectives? And if I have to ask a question about why something happened, am I curious and familiar enough with the rest of the strategy so I can actually understand why something happened inside of this huge machine? So, that's a complicated answer to that, but it really is. An organization, a company is a living, breathing organism, and measurements are happening all over the place. But clearly you can't pay attention to everyone, but they're all explicitly or implicitly related to one another.
Yeah. So I think it's really fascinating how you outlined all the interconnectedness and relatedness, but the key takeaway to me is, how it relates to the business strategy, how it measures, how it can be used to improve or make changes. But where do you start in that? Because I think a lot of companies start with, I have oodles of data. I'm going to build a dashboard that displays it nicely, right? Yep. I like how you flip that around and it's more about the business strategy. But where do you start then in terms of that process?
Yeah, so I think before you have these hundreds of metrics that are acting together as a unified machine, you start with your team. Again, like back to Brian's question, what's that advice? Start with something that you're already doing. What matters? Every Monday morning meeting, what are the 3 metrics that you guys are discussing? Oh, I need to make sure that our leads or the win rate or the ad spend. These are the 3 things that I know are impacting my goals. Okay, if we're familiar with these goals, and maybe furthermore, the other sort of key to success is that these metrics that you're starting with, they're perfectly defined. And perfect is a scary word because it sort of puts up barriers. But what I mean with that is they're understood, they're familiar and understood by your team. So if somebody says, well, what's the win rate? Well, are they referring to the customer win rate? Or are they referring to an opportunity win rate? Or are they looking at some other win rate? So be very explicit about the naming of your metric, the definition, and that your team understands what that metric is. And there's certain metrics, especially like the financial metrics, like EBITDA is a global metric. Everybody knows how EBITDA is calculated, how it's defined. But inside of your team, you could have a Brendan metric. Totally fine. As long as Brian knows what the Brendan metric is, that's another reason why people stop using dashboards. If if there's confusion about what we're actually monitoring and measuring, yeah, then it's sort of all the trust element falls apart. So you can start as small as you want, and you can start as unique as you want with metrics that only matter to you or your team. And then as you sort of start building out and start interfacing with the department, with the rest of the company, that's when those other connections, those strategic connections, start taking shape.
So,
Wow.
So good luck, Brian, figuring out what the Brendan metric means.
Oh, I've got some ideas. I've got some ideas.
Yeah, that one may be a lost cause right from the start, but
Yeah. And we could have a whole other episode on why are terms in technology marketing this many years in still so nebulous, and why do they change at every company?
Yeah.
I don't think plumbers and electricians have that problem when they talk about it.
Yeah, so I've given a talk. I gave a talk on why BI has failed users, and it's a fun talk that I've given. I've given it a couple times now. But when I was researching this topic, there was a quote from Socrates, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something to the effect of the definition of terms is the start to wisdom, or something like that. And I thought it was perfect. I mean, if you're going to work in a team, you've got to be on the same page. And that's one of the big reasons why all of these dashboard and business intelligence projects fail. People just don't know what we're measuring. So let's be super clear that when I go into a meeting and I say, what was your sales this month? Well, is it net of returns? Is it inclusive of taxes? Is it, including these 3 states? Like, just be super clear about that.
If I want to get a bunch of marketers to fight, I'll just open the door of a meeting room and I'll yell engagement rate, and I'll close the door and walk away and watch the fur fly.
Absolutely. So those are the things that you've got to define early on, so that everybody knows these are the metrics that matter. These are how they're calculated and defined. Let's go, crush it, and everybody's on the same page.
Okay, that was a perfect segue. That same page thing. You may be prejudicing your response. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. This is another 101 question, but it might only be like we forget. I think it's easy to forget. There's an 80-20 rule here, probably for our audience as well. There's a group of people who are already going, well, yeah, obviously, that all makes sense. Like, I'm going to the next podcast. These guys are saying things that have been true for a long time. But there's another chunk of our audience who's probably going, because I've worked with a lot of these companies. Hey, man, I've got a spreadsheet. I get some slides from my agency, and I get an email once a week from my managers. I know the score. So my question is, let's say you do everything you just described right. You define the terms, you got your audience, you made the dashboard, everybody agrees on it. When this works, when it goes right, and by the way, you already acknowledged that you'll probably have to change it next month, so it may not stay right for long, but when it's right, why should marketers care? Why should an organization care? What's the value of getting it right inside an organization for a group of people? And that may seem obvious to you folks, but I bet you some of our listeners haven't had a dashboard project yet. So let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is news to anybody, but the speed of being able to make decisions is a huge one. The confidence of being able to make decisions is probably the other one. So those 2 things really, really matter. So going from a spreadsheet model where either the data is manual, the problem is that not everybody might have access to that spreadsheet, or maybe they have a different version of the spreadsheet, or maybe the data is 3 weeks old. So moving from that to an automated dashboard or analytics platform, the data is up to date, it's consistent, and because it's consistent and being distributed to everybody on the team, everybody's on the same page and they can make faster, better decisions. Now, I'll give you, so those are, and that's not new. The BI world and the analytics world has forever said, listen, you put a dashboard in front of everybody and it focuses the decision-making speed and the confidence on better decisions. What's new today is that data in a structured and consistent way, especially as you start building up more and more metrics, that data starts feeding into the AI systems that will be able to look at way more data than humans can. So as a human, and you both are superhuman, you're probably able to look at 12 to 15 metrics and keep them all straight in your head and make decisions on that. And all the segmentations, so each think of that, right? Like every metric will have X number of different permutations, if you're looking at geo or customer type or whatever it is. An AI system, especially if it's well defined and consistent over time, will understand the norms. They'll understand the relationships. They'll be able to inspect those segments, and they'll be able to then answer questions or make inferences based on that to the order of 10,000 to 100,000 times more than humans can. So again, I'm advocating for a human in the loop always, but the AI is going to supercharge that ability to run processes overnight and constantly, whereas humans can't do that. So that's another reason why to get your data house in order, not just in a spreadsheet, get it in order in something where we can find these relationships, and an AI system can make use of that stuff. So that's the other thing that is kind of changing in the world today. So you put it in an analytics tool, and yes, your teams have got access to it. They can make faster, better, more confident decisions. But now an AI system can do the same thing.
If we fast forward, everything you said about AI makes sense to me. Once you get the data lake, it can see it all, it can share it all, keep some humans in the loop, sure. But why do we need a dashboard ever again if we've got the AI monitoring it all and is going to alert us to what we need to know? Does that not make a dashboard obsolete? Do I not need a dashboard anymore because I've got an AI agent that'll tell me when I need to pay attention?
Yeah. So Brian, this is probably the best question yet. Like, this one is super interesting, right? So humans are visual learners. We can process trends and patterns 1,000 times faster than we can by looking at a text output from a chatbot. So dashboards and data visualization and good communication in a visual sense, I don't believe that's ever going to go away. What is happening is that we're augmenting that with insights, or maybe look at it this way or look at it that way. So I believe it's the combination of making sure you're looking at the right chart with the right frame of mind. So the AI can sort of help identify, hey, there's something weird going on here. I believe this is what's happening. Why don't you have a look at the data here? So I think that visual ability to look at something is super, super important for humans. So I mean, there's always and so we have to sort of step back, because there's often two tasks when you're looking at data. One is a monitoring and a consistency task. So every single time I have my Monday morning meeting, I want to look at this chart and I want to have it up on the screen and present it to the rest of the exec team in exactly the same way. I cannot present them with a chart that looks different, because all of a sudden the context, the history, the decision-making mode
You start over
off
every
kilter.
time. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the other things that, AI might get this right in the future. But right now, at least, when you ask an AI for a chart, it's going to go off and present you with a chart that is probably going to be different if you ask it for that same chart next week. It's going to present a different axes. So it doesn't have that contextual ability yet. Now, it'll probably improve on that, and you can probably prompt it to be more precise and consistent. But again, I think there's a huge value in being very curated about certain types of presentation data presentation. So I think in certain cases, you always want to have this chart. You want to make sure that the axes are always the same, the colors are always the same. Everything that you're looking at and presenting to your teammates is familiar, and you can make the right decision. So I think the visual ability to do that is not there yet. It might not ever be there with an AI system. So I think that's really, really important. And then I think the other thing that's, as I was just saying, the other thing that's really important is when you're doing this ad hoc a question and answer kind of thing. I think the AI is actually really brilliant because you can have a dialogue and you can refine the questions that you're asking, and the AI can do deep dives on things that you probably would not have time to do. But then you may want to say, well, show that to me as a trend line, or show that to me with normal bars. Like, I think that ability to take that textual feedback, that conversational feedback, and actually turn it into something visual, a dashboard, I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think we as humans, we need visuals to understand. We're wired that way. I think AI makes it much, much faster to zero in on what matters and maybe interpret what you're looking at, but I want to see it. And I think the rest of the world is probably in that same mindset. They want to see it. They want it maybe explained in a more productive or more natural way. But yeah, I don't think dashboards are ever going to go away. I think people are visual learners. That's built in. That's baked in.
That is a fulsome defense of dashboards in the age of AI. And Brendan, I'm going to throw you the mic in a second, but one follow up to share with your point there, Allan, is I lived that visual experience. I've lived it frequently, where a bunch of people are looking at a table on a big screen, a table of data, and speculating as to what's happening. And then somebody turns it into a graph. Somebody puts it on a trend line, and everybody goes, oh, that's what's happening. And suddenly everybody agrees because everybody can see it instantly. So I've lived that experience.
I mean, listen, tables are awesome. I love tables as a way to organize and present data in a very, very consistent or very, very compressed manner. But you're missing things. You're missing that storytelling, that trend line, that analysis, that predictive ability, that a visual gives you. So yeah, for sure. I think there's so many beautiful and communicative visuals that there's no shortage of different visual tools that you can use to tell the story and explain the data better.
Agreed. Brendan, bring us home.
So I know we could definitely go on the AI topic for a while, and maybe that just means we need to have Allan back for a future episode, and we just focus on that, which you are always more than welcome to join us, Allan. But I did want to end or sort of start to wrap up with a question we've had fun with other guests that I want to now put you on the spot for. So,
yeah, sure.
What's the biggest myth about dashboards and metrics and things like that basically just drives you nuts? Like, everyone or a lot of people talk about it and you're like, please stop doing that. And then kind of give us the reality of behind that.
I think my biggest issue, and this goes way back, and again, I think it's just a human behavior. My biggest issue is that there's a group of people out there that believe that when you're monitoring metrics, you're monitoring them. They feel under the microscope by this, and I get that, but it's also it's a very defensive position to take. And I think if you can get your head around the fact that these are just numbers, understand them, look at how you can improve your decision making, because this is ultimately a tool that should help make you into more of a superpower, a superhuman. Use that so that you can have a discussion with your peers or your boss about the data, not about you, about the data. And then it's a way to sort of say, okay, well, based on this, let's do this, this, and this, right? So I've definitely heard a little bit of that, and I mean, I empathize with that. So let me sort of back up, because our customers come to us mostly from a dashboard forward, a data forward mindset. They want to put analytics in front. They want us to be more data driven. They need this. I mean, the pace of business today almost requires it. So that comment or that myth, I've heard more from employees. There's a resistance and sort of a hesitation. Now, I think part of that also comes from the fact that the metrics that they're looking at are not trusted. So it might be a little bit of not only do I feel like I'm under the microscope, but I don't get it. I think it's a waste of time, and these things are ill defined, and we can never agree on the right metric definition anyhow. So that's up to the folks that are putting these analytic tools in place. Make sure you define the metrics. Make sure everybody knows this is what it means. So I know I keep coming back to that, but that definition of terms is so important. And I actually think it also helps all the employees feel safer about using the tools as well. So yeah, that's definitely one that I hear. But like it, for the most part, the world, it's not optional anymore. Like, you need to understand data. You need to be data literate. You need to know how to use this as a tool and be faster and more confident at the decisions that you're making. That's just the way it is.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? Wow. Maybe that's the right place to wrap up, Brendan. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that sounds good, and appreciate your insights today, Allan. Your help on this, both on the podcast and in as our paths continue to cross throughout both of our careers. It's great connecting with you again and having you on the podcast. And yeah, I think the simplicity message was front and center for me, and I can't agree enough with the clear defining of terms, because I run into that more times than I can count, and I would be a millionaire if I charged for each of those in some fashion.
Absolutely.
So yeah, really appreciate it, Allan. Any final words on your side? Anything you want to wrap us up with, Allan?
No, I mean, even if you're measuring things in Excel, that's the right thing to do. But, automate it, bring it out to more and more people, and your business will reward you. So just get moving on that stuff.
Fantastic. That's a great way to wrap up. And my closer will be twofold. It's a two-part close. One is I feel smart today because you're the second guest on this podcast to reference ancient Greek philosophy in a technology marketing discussion. I think episode 1, John Blackmore might have referenced one of the big three philosophers in Greece. So that makes me feel smart, like we're resting on foundations that matter. The other thing I'm really going to encourage every listener to comment on when they are finished this episode is I want to know what their definition, their common term for the Brendan metric would be. What would we be measuring, and how would it be described? I would like to know
the Brendan metric. Absolutely. Yes. I'd be interested in that one too, for sure.
I'm interested in that one.
Our thanks, Allan. It's always a great pleasure to work with you and to talk to you and to share a beer with you, and appreciate your insights today. I have a funny notion we'll be inviting you back.
That's great. I really appreciate it. Brian, Brendan, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, folks, if you liked that episode, you won't believe the next one.
So don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform and you won't miss out.
Or if you've got an idea we haven't thought of yet, hit us up in the comments. We'll cover that too.